most common reasons I see why people don't get into Doctor Who or don't give it a chance is because, well, there's quite a lot of old Doctor Who episodes, especially in the classic era. People can find it a little bit daunting. So I thought I'd do a small series of videos breaking down each one of the Doctors, their time aboard the TARDIS, a few minor facts to remember, and see if we can't make this a little bit easier to condense. So we're going to do this Doctor by Doctor, and it'll take about 13 or 14 videos to kind of get through this, but I'll make a playlist and stick it on the side so you can probably get a good idea of each Doctor. Now, we have to start at the beginning, and while some may say Joe Martin's before the beginning, I'm going to just go with what we saw. So the first Doctor is played by actor William Hartnell, and he was in the role for 3 years, with his first story being at the start of the show, the 23rd of November 1963, and his last one being the 29th of October 1966. Now, he ultimately was the Doctor for 134 separate episodes of the show across 29 separate stories, with his first one being An Unearthly Child back in Series 1, and his final story being The 10th Planet, which was the second story of Series 4. Now, it might seem weird, but this was fairly common for Doctors around that time period, that they would often leave in the middle of a season, switch to someone else, and then things would just continue as normal. Now, as I said, he was the Doctor for 29 stories and 134 episodes, with his shortest story being the one-shot Mission to the Unknown, and his longest story being The Daleks' Master Plan, which was 12 parts long, to which each part being 25 minutes, that equals up to approximately 300 minutes just for one story, which can be quite long. Now, unfortunately, due to record keepings at the time, quite a lot of there are 10 stories of the first Doctor's era that are currently unavailable, which is, I'm sure most people now know about kind of streaming services, but they weren't necessarily very careful with storing the episodes at the time, and some of them have either been lost or destroyed. And they usually get around this by kind of people finding old recordings of it that they made back in the day on VHS tapes, but some of them are still missing. Now, while there are some episodes that are available that do have parts missing, they have been recreated in animation form. Which, yeah. For example, William Hartnell's final story, The 10th Planet, while the first 3 parts are still there and intact, the final part was missing, but is now been recreated in animated form. But as I said, they haven't quite found everything yet, so there are 10 stories which are still missing. Marco Polo, The Crusade, Galaxy 4, Mission to the Unknown, The Mythmakers, The Daleks' Master Plan, The Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve, The Celestial Toymaker, The Savages, and The Smugglers. All of these stories at the moment are currently unavailable on DVD or streaming services, but we hold out hope that maybe one day parts of them can be found or recreated for us to watch and enjoy once again. Now, the first Doctor, through his 3 years aboard the TARDIS, he also had 10 separate companions, such as his granddaughter, Susan Foreman, the very first, 2 of Susan's teachers, named Ian Chesterton and Barbara Wright, and a selection of people along the way, including Vicky Pallister, Stephen Taylor, 2 one-shot companions called Katerina and Sarah Kingdom, Dodo Chaplet, Polly Wright, and Ben Jackson, all of whom remained for varying lengths of time, but the ones who ended Hartnell's run, Polly Wright and Ben Jackson, would stay around for a bit with the next Doctor, which I'll get to in my next story. Now, William Hartnell did return to the role. He left in 1966, but he did return to the role in 1972 for the 10th anniversary of the show, The Three Doctors. However, due to his somewhat failing health, he had pre-recorded all of his parts, all of his lines, so that he could do his kind of separate from the other actors. And it was his failing health in 1966 which had kind of created the idea of regeneration. He had begun to slow down and things were taking a bit more time and he wasn't always best on his feet. So eventually they decided that they had introduced the concept of regeneration so they could swap him out. But as I said, he did return in 1972. Now, William Hartnell would sadly pass away in 1975, but the first Doctor would return again in various stories later along the line. In 1983, to celebrate 20 years of the show, they brought back the first Doctor, this time played by actor Richard Humdall, for the 20th anniversary episode The Five Doctors, where he starred alongside all the rest of his successors. And in 2013, to celebrate 50 years of the show, they created a docudrama film titled An Adventure in Space and Time, which had David Bradley portraying William Hartnell, essentially. He's playing William Hartnell, showing how those early days of Doctor Who worked and how they were filmed. And David Bradley would later return to portray the first Doctor properly in the 12th Doctor's final episode, Twice Upon a Time. So there you go, there's my brief rundown of the first Doctor played by William Hartnell, and also later by Richard Humdall and David Bradley. So, that's all you need to know about the first Doctor. I'll see you with the second.